Hello, welcome back to my little series here on the petition to the APA. So I've kind of gotten us up to the delivery point. So I wrote the petition back in 2018, seeing the opportunity to link or to document the neglect, the negligent neglect, and collusion, complicity of the American Psychological Association in the psychological abuse of children and the psychological abuse of their parents because of their negligent apathy and failure to discharge their APA's duty to protect obligations. And so I wrote up the petition document. And so a lot of this is not designed to convince anybody at the AP of anything. Hopefully it would, but it's not designed for that purpose. It's designed as documentation. So our the first page I kind of just did for the media, giving like red meat quotes. But the really it starts with Article 1. And notice I published this book back then, self-published, but published, because I wanted two reasons. I wanted to give you two things. I wanted to give you the ability to cite this. So if you're a professional who's writing an ethics article or looking back retrospectively on how did things get so bad, where was the APA, you can actually cite now to this. It's in the record. So I wanted to give you something citable. The other thing is I want to give you something, a hard copy that you can place in your hands right now. So now when you're following up with the petition to the APA, you can get this from Amazon and send it to them. And so you can wind up with 1,000 of these showing up at their doors from 1,000 different parents saying, well, we were looking for an answer. Now, the problem is you don't have anybody to answer. I mean, who's your person to answer? When I went, I took Wendy Perry and Rod McCall, two parent advocates with me, because I'm empowering parents for you guys to be able to solve your problems. And that's my role as a psychologist. It isn't to solve your problems for you, it's to facilitate your ability to have voice and solve your problems. So I wrote the petition. I did my professional obligation, which is give you the professional knowledge. But then I took you with me to hand deliver it to the APA. I took two parent representatives, which is kind of like my supporting NAMI or supporting CHAD or whatever. I'm supporting the parent advocacy groups. And at that point, Wendy Perry was prominent, and Rod McCall is a eloquent spokesman because he lost his son. Rod McCall's son, Eric, is the counterpart to the other side of Caden. And so there's Caden was killed by a pathological parent, where they just misdiagnosed how pathological, and so there's definite concerns that that on that side that the child's fears of the parent might be valid because the parent's a scary person. That absolutely is a valid concern, and it needs to be looked at. Caden is a real situation, and so is Eric. Eric is the other side. And I don't like using children for advance our agenda. However, I think it's okay in this situation. Eric's passed away. Eric's left us. And I think I asked one point, I was meeting with Rod down in Texas, and we were talking. I said, Rod, can I take on Eric as a client? And he kind of looked at me where it was like his son's dead, but I said, yeah, of course, but I'm not sure what that means. And what that means is right now that I'm allowed to represent for Eric's voice. And so I will. You raise Caden, I'll bring Eric. And Rod McCall has written a book, For Love of Eric. You can go to Amazon and get it. So you have Caden is absolutely real, so is Eric. And if you want to know more about Eric's situation, you can talk to his dad, Rod, and he will be happy to, well, not happy, but he will be willing to explain the situation. He presents on this a lot. So I took him back, and we held a little press conference with no press people, because I'm a psychologist. I don't know, but I did, because I wanted to again role model for you parents that it doesn't matter if you think it's going to be effective. You do the right thing and let consequences take care of themselves. And it doesn't matter if I'm just a single lone person. Speak, speak. because this is a rippling of a sex abuse pathology. It hides extraordinarily well, but it's the way you break out of sex abuse is you get that little girl to speak, you get that child to speak, and because it's a hidden pathology. And so same thing over here. That's the ripple of that theme, is it's hidden. And so the treatment is for you folks to find your voice and to speak. And so that's what I'm doing. I'm helping facilitate your ability to find your voice. And I'm providing you with a professional level support that professionals should provide you with. For Chad, Nami, anybody, I'm providing you with the professional terminology and the professional constructs and everything that you need from the professionals. But it's up to you to have the voice. There's a problem, though, with your voice is because you're being traumatized. You're in active trauma that's going to shut down linear logical thinking, foresight and planning ahead, and self-reflective insight. So you're more focused on your trauma and trying to recover your children, which are your world, and you're trying to protect you. And that's exactly where you should be. But that's going to interfere with your ability to defend yourself, to come together to defend yourself, especially if you don't have mental health support from AFCC, for a parent organization, or from Parental Alienation Study Group as just a side thing. If you don't have professional support over here, you can't just, you're being traumatized. You won't be able to generate your own parent support group at the level that you need. So right now you're in kind of in a position of a mob, an angry mob with pitchforks. Okay, you have no organized central place for the APA to respond to. So I'm not quite sure what they're going to do about that. But I think if they just respond generally and just, because the first remedy on this, Article 1 and 2 are just setting the foundations, like for the board complaints or for the ethical violations, foundations. But then it was on Article 3 that I described the ethical violations. So that's the ones that put the APA on notice. You are now aware of the ethical violations of 2.01 and 2.04, 9.01, 3.04 in forensic psychology. So what are you going to do about it? They have ethical obligations just like me, 1.05. What are you going to do about it? Nothing, silence. So, and then what you're going to want to activate, though, is Article 4, the remedies. Okay. We ask for 3 things. 1, remedy 1, a press release from the APA that says we support standard 2.01 boundaries of competence. Period. That's all they have to say. A press release supporting their own ethics code standard 2.01. If they just give you parents that will be so valuable to you, because then that communicates to everybody that they need to be competent, and that is clear message to the forensic psychologist, given the context and where it's coming from, that they're telling the forensic psychology people, you need to know what you're doing. You need to abide by the APA ethics code. And it's so easy for the APA to do a press release supporting, but they won't even give you a press release supporting their own ethics code. That is such contempt for you. You are absolutely nothing to them. If they won't even support their own ethics code for you, they've abandoned you entirely to this. But there's your link into the class action. They have entirely abandoned you to the unethical malpractice of the forensic psychologists that they support. Who did they give this petition to? I'm going to put my money on Deutsch. Okay, I don't know. Maybe not. But find out. Find that she's a forensic psychologist. Find out. I bet you they gave it to a committee of forensic psychologists. So there's allegations of unethical practice by forensic psychologists. Who did they give the petition to? Forensic psychologists. What happens to it? Disappears for 5 years. If you can't get them on a class action on that, you're a class of people, you're vulnerable, and you're being forced to use forensic psychologists who are the worst imaginable, and They're just negligent. Failure to show proper care in doing something. The APA is negligent in enforcing or in supporting its own ethics code, and as a result, they're complicit with child abuse. So the moment I got this in their hands, I know they're not going to do anything about it. I was hoping that the parent advocates at Wendy or others who were advocating at the time would follow up with them and make sure we got answers. But they just, once it's done, they're off to other things, and there's no staying power with you parents because you're involved in your own stuff. And so it just, and you just take no response, and it just goes on and just disappears into the ether of things. No, it doesn't, because I'm still here, and I think ahead. I do have foresight and planning ahead. So I put up a website, complicity with child abuse, APA, complicit. And so I'm accusing the APA of being complicit with child abuse. I will make that argument, and I will support it. I will support it that they are complicit with child abuse. Get me a debate. I can't do that. I can't get somebody to, from forensic psychology or the APA or AFCC or even the Gardnerian people. I can't get them to debate me. They run from me. So it's up to you. Find me somebody to debate. Consider this. If you have a debate, an online moderated debate, like real formal thing, get a law school student association to host an online debate on the respective roles of forensic and clinical psychology in the family courts. Nice, easy topic. Forensic and psychology in the family courts. Law school hosted by this, or anybody hosted by AFCC. I don't care who hosts it. A parents organization hosts it. PASG hosts it. I don't care who hosts it. Just find a forensic psychologist, find an APA representative, find anybody to debate what's going on in the family courts. Put me on that same stage and imagine how valuable that would be for you. The entire world, it's online, they're looking at it, and we can have a discussion about what's going on in the family courts. And everybody can hear it, and we can start making reasoned decisions about our path forward. That would be so helpful to have but none of them will do that. The forensic psychologists won't, the AFCC won't, the APA won't, the Gardnerians won't. Nobody else will have that debate about the issue publicly. Why? Have I mentioned that the pathogen hides? It hides extraordinarily well. We need to expose it from hiding. I'm willing to debate. Where are they? Stahl, Simon, Deutsch, Sullivan? Forensic psychologist? Pick one. Pick one. APA representative, off the ethics committee, off the forensic division. Pick somebody from the APA and put them into an online debate. That would be so incredibly helpful to you, but I can't make that happen. And parents are just kind of inert and traumatized. You have no coherent organization to you. You're a swarm, you're a mob. And so that's kind of how you're going to have to work at this point. You're kind of a swarm mentality. I can kind of point you in the general directions. You got licensing boards. You've got Oregon Licensing Board, who's driven away your only ally over here, Dr. Childers, who can no longer work in the family courts because of the forensic psychologist decision and ruling in Oregon. So I'd let them know that their decision had consequences for you. You be kind. I'm not telling you to harass them. I'm telling you to be kind and be appropriate, but let them know that their absence of foresight and planning ahead had consequences that are difficult for you. And then contact your local licensing boards. They're not going to forensic psychology, but you're going to have to get your legislatures over and showing them what happened in Oregon and saying, whoa. And the Blue Ribbon Commission, the New York Blue Ribbon Commission, the two of those, and you say, these same forensic psychologists are on our licensing boards. And every parent complaint that goes into the licensing board of North Carolina or Virginia or Montana or Alabama or Florida or anywhere. Every licensing board complaint that you send in is being reviewed by the same forensic psychologists that are being bashed in the Blue Ribbon Commission report as being dangerous to, and harmful to children and without scientific validity. Those same psychologists are sitting on the licensing board reviewing your complaints. Go to your legislature. We need outside and independent review. I would suggest that you get your legislatures to extend me an invitation to come testify. I did in Pennsylvania. A parent got me an invitation to come testify in Pennsylvania. Apparently, none of you parents, other parents, can get me an invitation to testify anywhere. I don't know why, but okay. So we got Caden's Law going through all over the place. In my home state of California, Caden's Law is going through. I did not get an invitation to come talk to them, or nobody's reaching out from the state to get my input on it, or that's a you problem. Okay. It's not for me to solve your problem. I am your weapon. I'm not your warrior. But if you're waiting around for me to solve this, good luck. You're going to be in trouble. Okay. I've given you everything I can give you. I gave you the knowledge. I gave you the tools. I gave you everything. I've exposed the APA's complicity. I've exposed the AFC. I've exposed all the forensic psychologists multiple times in blogs, false allies, and the Gardnerian PAS people. I've given you the diagnosis. I've given you the instruments to do that. And now I have even exposed the corruption of the licensing boards by the forensic psychologists by sacrificing myself to them. I could have kept myself safe. I made myself appear vulnerable, and I constructed bait for them, and they took it. So now they're exposed. So, but because of that, I have to leave the family courts. I had to sacrifice. I'm kind of like that Obi-Wan, when you guys are trying to escape the Death Star and I'm fighting Darth. I see you guys making your escape. Okay. The best thing I can do for you is to sacrifice myself, because that will be the most clear exposure. The best thing for the licensing board would be if they didn't sanction me. Okay. That would be the worst thing for you. And that's why beforehand, I'm waiting for this thing to come back. You haven't heard me talking about it a lot because I don't want to mess with it. I did not want to mess with how it was decided, because I'm hoping I don't get sanctioned. I don't want to have to spend the money, and I don't want the dink on my life. Now, it's a jurisdictional thing. It's not an ethical thing. It's not a big deal. I'll just go back to early childhood and ADHD and stuff. Nobody cares over there. They love me over there. Oh my goodness, nobody cares about any of this stuff. Nobody's trying to hurt me over there. And so I'm okay. If they sanction me, I'll do okay. But I'd prefer not to get sanctioned personally. But if I don't get sanctioned, then that's not going to expose the forensic psychologists on the board. So they won't have taken the bait, or the appellate court will have taken them off the hook. And the appellate court didn't take them off the hook. The appellate court massaged their interpretation of the law so to support the decision of the forensic psychologists that were not supportable. Okay, and so that's an interesting situation. But I will let all the family law attorneys look at this and say, was Dr. Childress practicing in Oregon without a license, or did the Oregon Licensing Board extend their jurisdiction to Dr. Childress in order to retaliate against me? I'll let all the mental health professionals look at that, because holy cow, you're now exposed, because you might be conducting an evaluation and you might need to be licensed in that state because you conducted an evaluation. Who knows? I don't know. So that's why I'm getting at it. I don't know what will keep me safe and what won't. So if you're a mental health professional, you probably looking at the Oregon decision, because that applies to you now too, as to whether or not you're doing an evaluation for the attorney, because you provided an attorney with an opinion. So I don't know. But the law exempts you from attorneys. The law exempted me from Dorsey Pruder and the Conscious Co-Parenting Institute. But when the laws can change their framing after the fact, it's too dangerous for mental health people out here. So I suggest all the mental health people look at the information too, to make your own decision. Was I practicing in Oregon without a license, and how? Or did Oregon extend their jurisdiction to sanction me specifically in retaliation? So the the mental health people can look at that. Family law attorneys can look at that. As I'm preparing for any sort of international cross examination or anything family law related in the courts, you can look at that and prepare for any sort of cross examination I have to deal with from here on out on the issue. And you can get your legislators to look at that. And the legislators can look and say, hey, did Dr. Childers practice in Oregon, or was this a problem with the licensing board? And you can get your licensing boards to look at that and say, did Oregon make a right decision? So Pennsylvania licensing board can look at this situation with Dr. Childers in Oregon, and the Pennsylvania licensing board can kind of conceptualize for themselves, was this an accurate decision from Oregon? And if it wasn't, how is Pennsylvania going to adjust its approach with this new information about the nature, the corrupting nature of forensic psychology? You add in the Blue Ribbon Commission, and it's basically you need to cleanse all the forensic psychologists out of the licensing boards. It needs to go back to all clinical psychologists hear all cases. So if you're going to get a licensing board against you as a psychologist, you are a psychologist. You're not a forensic, you're not a clinical, you're just a psychologist. Clinical psychologists are everybody. We're the ones who deal with everybody. ADHD, autism, family courts, eating disorders, substance abuse. We have one group of people, they're called clinical psychologists. They abide by the APA ethics code, and we apply by the highest standards of professional practice. If there's a problem with this, we submit a complaint to the ethics or to the licensing board, and another clinical psychologist will hold us to the highest standards of the APA ethics code. Okay. But clinical psychologists should be reviewed by clinical psychologists, and that we should be the only ones over here. So with that kind of scope, I've given you something in your hand that you can take around, something you can cite. I anticipate this will be changing because it is child psychological abuse. Everything I say is 100% true and correct. Note even that Dorsey Pruder and Conscious Co-Parenting Institute data is the third of Greenham, Childress, Pruder, third of Miss Greenham's articles, okay, on the dark personalities and delusion disorders. There's actually data now out of Dorsey's research, content analysis research, and data coding that indicates that the 12 associated clinical signs are present and are present a lot. That's proof positive that what I'm saying is absolutely true. I made a prediction. It shows up in the data. That's called the scientific method. Okay. What I'm saying is absolutely true. It should have been obvious before, but now you say, where's the research? There it is. Where's the peer-reviewed research? Well, it gets submitted to a journal and get published. Okay, but there's your data. And I suggest research people get over to Dorsey and get an MOU with her and start getting their data. You people disrespect Dorsey something fierce. That needs to stop. She's been here 10 years. High Road solves the pathology in 4 days. Get over to her and start talking about what she's doing, you people. It's just insane what's going on over here. And you parents accept that. Hopefully you don't. The parents before you did. And because the parents before you did, you're still dealing with exactly the same forensic psychologists they had for their custody evaluation. So this has been going on for 10 years. Same I'm seeing them. I'm seeing the same ones. They're still around that destroyed their lives. And now they're destroying your life. And they will destroy the next family's life unless somebody among you stops them, because I can't. I tried. I'm trying to support you in stopping them. But you see what happens to me. Anybody who tries to help you is going to face the same thing until you're able to protect us. The way you protect us is by making it as dangerous to the allies of the pathology as it is to your allies. And then getting the APA over here, getting this as remedy two. They need to have a conference of ethics, psychometrics, cultural psychology, clinical psychology, attachment people, family systems people, no forensic psychologists, but real knowledge needs to come together and figure out this pathology in the court. Pilot program for the family courts. Get the legislature to fund a pilot program, 2 years. Put your university in charge of coming up with the diagnostic assessment protocol. I've given you a diagnostic assessment protocol. I was hired by FEMA and the DOJ to do just that, develop a diagnostic assessment protocols for the court. But you guys don't believe me. You don't trust me. Fine, do it yourself. Come up with your diagnostic assessment protocol so that your clinical psychologist will be safe to come back. Until you do, it's going to be a nightmare over here. I would suggest you get the APA to help you out with that. And I suggest you get a class action lawsuit naming the APA, AFCC licensing boards, and John Doe forensic custody evaluators across the board. And even if it does, and then you don't win it, or you drop the cases against various people, or you negotiate out on various people, it doesn't matter, because once you file it, you get CNN or your major media over looking at the issues in the family court. You cite to the Blue Ribbon Commission on Forensic Evaluations and Caden's Law coming through, and oh my gosh, the media has wonderful stories over here. But it's up to you to get them. Get me a debate. I would love, this is my dream on this, is that the student association of a law school would combine with the student association of the graduate psychology program at the same school, and they would co-sponsor a debate about the mental health in the family courts. So you got the psychology department and the legal department and the student associations sponsoring an online debate about the role of clinical and forensic psychology in the family courts. And I think that would be valuable for the mental health side, and the students coming up, and the lawyers want to go into family law, and then we're going to host this debate. And so you bring Dr. Childress in representing clinical psychology, and you bring in representing forensic psychology. Okay? I can't make that happen. So with that, I'm going to head off and talk to you next time about something else. All right. Take care, people.